Welcome to Columbia County Progress, brought to you by the Democratic Party of Columbia County. I'm your host, Jim Haessly. Today, we're talking with two members of our assembly, Maureen McCarville and Karen DeSanto, both elected to the assembly in 2024, and both are just over midway through their 2-year terms. Yeah. Maureen represents the 42nd, and Karen represents the 40th. Maureen, maybe you can tell us about some of the area. What are some of the cities and townships that you represent?
Sure. So half of my district is in Dane County. The other half is in Columbia County. So I go from probably like an ultra blue type neighborhood or electorate all the way up to kind of a red and everything in between. And so I have a piece of Madison, and then I have Windsor, Forest, Burke, Arlington, Lodi, Columbus, Fall River. There's just a whole bunch of little towns in between. York, Leeds.
Don't forget Poinette.
Don't forget Poinette. And generally the town and the village if they have both. Okay. And so it's really nice because I actually reside about a mile from the county line. I'm always in the middle. Even my 42 is kind of in the middle of, the assembly numbers. And so for me, it's like, it's very central. So it's easy to get to the different areas
Right.
in the district.
What did you do before you were elected?
Well, politically or work-wise?
Let's go both, professionally and politically.
Okay, so I worked for Madison Gas and Electric for 40 years. I retired out of there in August, right prior to the election. I was manager in cash management. I worked in the field for the first 18 years that I was there. I was an affirmative action hire, which would be equivalent to DEI. They needed to have more girls do more boy jobs. So I was out in the field, and I worked in the metering department. And I used to tell people when I ran for politics that there probably wasn't a house or a garage or a basement in the service territory that I had not been into. So I was used to talking to people and dealing with their dogs or whatever the case may be. So that was kind of my work history. I was on the other side. I was elected as a chief steward for my local when I was on the union side. I bargained labor contracts at the grassroots level for many years. I ran for the village board, sat 2 terms on there. I was appointed to a police commission. The census back in those years declared that we had the population that required a police commission. And so the village president they needed one of the trustees to help with that. And I enjoyed that. So I took 2 appointments to that for another 10 years and then onto the county board in 2012. And I'll be doing my last meeting in a couple of weeks. So that's going to be kind of... And then ran for the assembly and met Karen DeSanto. Another first-timer. That's kind of what brings me to here.
Speaking of, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. My background, very diverse. And this is what I love about all of our colleagues is we are just so different, in how we got to here. So prior to this, like just 2 years ago, I had just retired from the Boys and Girls Clubs of West Central Wisconsin. I was CEO for 12 and a half years. It was during that time that, I took on a larger leadership role, becoming the state alliance president, one of the first female state alliance presidents. So there's that, which really put me in a position to take care of kids and families across the state, not just in West Central Wisconsin, which also gives you a very wide breadth of knowledge of what is needed, right? What families and kids go through in school districts and communities and rural areas and transportation, all the things that really matter. It's through that experience of being state director that I was given some nice accolades, which put me in a national level voice for rural communities. So my clubs in West Central Wisconsin were kind of the people that followed on how to run clubs in small towns and make them very successful. So very proud of all that. Prior to that, I lived on a circus train and traveled with Ringling Brothers Martin and Bailey Circus for many, many years. Traveled all over the world with that, raised our family in a circus environment. Incredible. And all of these experiences put me here because it's like what Maureen was talking about. When you travel, you see difference. You see different cultures, different topographies, different traditions, different languages, how families operate differently. It's just a big education and, quite frankly, a value system builder for me on what came next. So my circus, and that was 30 years. I even did it while I was CEO. In my vacations, I would go and travel with shows, and so never really stop. You can't take the sawdust out of the girl, right? But that's what brought us to Wisconsin is circus, because we got a job at Circus World Museum, and then one thing led to another with the Boys and Girls Club. So when I retired, the amazing Dave Considine called me up, who was retiring after serving 10 years in the state legislature. He and I had been friends for many, many years, working for kids and families on educational programs. And so he said, you might want to consider this. And at the time I was like, no, because who wants, when you look at this, boy, hindsight, it's like you throw yourself into a viper pit. I mean, it's fabulous. Like Maureen and my colleagues and the people I knock doors on are fabulous. But there's a lot of really ugliness that we all know are happening in politics. And it just doesn't say on the federal level. It is very ugly. And people have, like we were talking about before we started filming, is people seem to have a license to just say and do and be as nasty as they want to be.
Yeah.
So
before we get too deep into that,
let me talk about my amazing district. I mean, it's number 40, Maureen. So I know it's not the 42, but the 40th district is right where I live. Baraboo's the heart of it. I have Sauk County, not all of Sauk County, and part of Columbia County. So in Sauk, I have Baraboo, Spring Green, Sauk Prairie, Sauk, Merrimack, all the way west into Bear Creek and Plain. So those are some of my areas. And then moving in this direction is the city of Portage, Partyville, and then right butting up into Maureen's district, the smaller towns and villages around that area. So, I love it. And I love my district.
Okay.
I love it.
So moving into some of the substantive questions, what do you see as the top issues facing the state right now?
What we hear from people is they are done with referendums. Their property taxes are going out, and then they got to turn around and get hit with a referendum, right? So that's huge. On that same note, they want their kids and their grandkids and their neighbors and whoever to have a good, solid education.
Okay.
So we got to solve for that. And when you got a ton of money sitting in the bank and you're calling it a surplus, to me, that is such a bogus term. You haven't paid your bills.
Yeah.
You haven't done what you're supposed to do constitutionally or morally or ethically. And so you have money sitting there that you want to then dole out and pay part of whatever. No, we need to pay our bills. So we need to restructure how we're doing that. There's a bill out there now that does just that. But it will take it off the backs of the property taxpayers and put it into a state budget. And going forward, then match it up with the CPI so that you don't have this problem, this ongoing problem, and you're providing a good education to all the kids. So that's a huge.
It goes right into the affordability. I mean, when we talk about that's such a big word, but I really like to pare it down, and my constituents actually help me pare it down. But Maureen's right. Education is a huge one, and a state obligation. We are just not meeting that need. You're right. We don't have a surplus. We just haven't paid our bills. We haven't done what we said we were going to do. So it's sitting there and everybody's talking about it, including our governor, as if it's this extra money that we're sitting on. So it's unfortunate, the messaging of that.
Right.
So affordability means absolutely, we got to manage, especially for our retirees and new younger families with kids coming into the school districts. How do we keep them here, especially in our smaller districts? That's what we look at. So we talk about affordability is absolutely taxes. But taxes and this referendum talk is a double-edged sword, right? I think people don't understand the ramification of it. But I'll tell you, if we invested in our public schools as our constitutional value system says we should, your taxes would go down. We would not have property tax raising. We just wouldn't. Okay. It's just so the math is so simple. in addition to that, we look at healthcare. I mean, when healthcare got ripped out for millions of Medicaid, Medicare, ACA, oh my gosh, every single day I have people every day people talk to me about their healthcare needs, and it's escalating. And now RX, insulin, very basic medications that people are on. How do we prescription drugs and how we rein in our pharmaceutical lobbyists, and how do we rein all those costs in so that we can help people stay in their homes, and afford it. Groceries, another simple one,
So the affordability thing, I mean, it's really kind of a heart and soul of all the other problems.
Right,
So
right.
if you take, like, I've got a couple of nieces that they have children, they're single moms, and the stress never quits. How do I put enough gas in the car just to get to work to buy the groceries? And then there's the rent and there's this and that. And as a family, we do everything we can to help. But it hits their pride and that sort of thing, that they need help to begin with. And they're working their butts off. They're working 50, 60 hours a week,
Right.
and, grandma or the aunt or somebody is helping watch the kids.
Right.
So, I mean, so then you factor all that in, and then we wonder why we have mental health problems when seniors are paying more in a month for their taxes and what they originally took out for a loan for the home itself. I've had people over the years that have said, I have to put away as much in a month or more than I did. I thought when I paid my house off, that was done. Now they're putting it away to pay their taxes, and they still may be, done out of their homes.
Right.
And so, everybody's like one step away from the edge, which leads to the whole mental health thing, which is then, if you start a fire over here, don't be surprised if all these other fires start
Absolutely.
up. So you have to go to the source. You have to go to the root of the problems in order to fix it. Because a lot of your other issues may I don't want to say self-correct. You're still going to have to deal with the fallout, but you can start to contain any of the new, right? So if we deal with the school issue, and we deal with the taxes, and we stop the referendums, and people can calm down, it's going to be better for their health, their physical health. It's going to be better for their mental health. It's going to be better for the market. It's going to, allow for people to take a breath and actually enjoy their lives, right?
Yeah. So affordability is really at the core of a lot of the concerns that you have. Do the primary issues vary across different demographics, across Democratic and Republican and Independents?
Yeah, but it's, yes, I think it does. Different in their messaging about what that is.
Or their blame it.
So, right, correct. So, for instance, they don't think affordability around taxes is because they're not, our majority party is the GOP, right? Has been for 15
decades. So
right?
how did we get here?
Right. So their idea of affordability on school referendums, say, is so different than ours would be. Affordability for them is not around the cost of mental health or health care. They, SNAP benefits. There's a reason. Here's a great, I follow all of it's certainly in my district, but in our area here, in our many county area, is how are our food pantries doing? Look at a food pantry. Look at any food pantry. They are off the charts and busy.
Right.
That's a huge indication of what is happening in our society and what is happening in our communities. When you've got hardworking people who have, like Maureen said, my goodness, I saw this in the Boys and Girls Club 1,000%. People's pride, and they don't want to ask for help. They can take care of themselves. They always have.
Right.
We're Americans. We're Wisconsinites. It's what we do. We take care of ourselves and our families. When they can't afford basic things like food, we have an issue in our state. And that's where we talk differently about it than perhaps our Republican counterparts.
And not only is it that they talk differently about it, but they talk in a disparaging way about it.
Absolutely.
That there's something
that we did, or something that those, we hear that in our body is those people, them, There's a lot of names. And of course, it's always, let's point fingers at the most marginalized people, the incarcerated, those, or the people, the single moms. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about any woman who wants to have contraceptive care provided. Let's talk about that as a state.
I had a guy on the county board, which is a little ways away from the state stuff, but there was a discussion about homelessness that was going on at the county board level. And this guy says, it's supposed to be a nonpartisan board, but clearly, you know what side people would come from. And he said that people are homeless because they sinned. You know, they sinned. And it's like, really? That's,
Okay.
so some little kid doesn't have a home, or, some family is like, I remember this story, and this just broke my heart years ago, but this family came and talked, and they said, look, we were doing fine. We got 2 kids. We both had jobs. They don't pay a ton of money, but we were able to make the rent, right? And they said in one night, they became homeless because their lease was up and because the market reacts to the demand. So government can't control the demand, but because the demand is high, the landlord was able to jerk up the rent a couple $100.
Right.
They couldn't make the rent, couldn't sign the lease. They were living in their vehicle and no fault to their own. Still have the same jobs, nothing changes other than they got priced out and put on the street like that. So those are the kind of things, they didn't sin, for the love of God.
Oh my God.
Pardon the pun. But I mean, it was just a result of what's going on out there. And the economy shouldn't be that tight. I mean, there should be, as a society, we have a duty to help people. I mean, that's what we do in government. Allegedly, we're from the government. We're here to help. So the safety nets have gone, and we become, I think on the Republican side, they're so judgmental. They're so willing to point a finger, and they're so willing to try to create the argument of who's to blame that it takes away from what the real argument is people don't have food and a place to live, for the love of God.
In the most, the greatest country in the world, right? We can't feed, house, or give medical care to our own citizens. And that's how the GOP talks about it. Our counterparts,
but they will tell you they've got a surplus and they want to mail everybody a rebate check
for $100 or $300, which is nothing. Anywho, back to I think that's such a great observation, is how we communicate. Now, I'm not hey, I can get along with everybody. That has been my job since I was a young girl. I can see 8 or 9 years old, walking the line of, I don't agree with you, but let's figure it out. Let's talk it through, and we'll get through it.
I'm on a task force. Karen's done some work too, where we worked across the aisle. So it's not like people hate each other on the other side of the aisle. I mean, the media, again,
makes it seem like we do.
Yeah, they'll put it out there like, oh my God. And it's like, well, but we did a bunch of stuff that was very bipartisan, I was on a task force for elders that we recently were able to get some legislation passed. I don't know if Governor signed it yet or not, but basically kind of takes the sting out of crypto machines that are scamming seniors, says it was an elder task force. And that's a great thing. It says you can't do more than like a few $100 on a transaction. And we know from researching other states that effectively shuts them down. Because then they gotta scam you 10 times rather, to get $10,000 or whatever they're after. But so the point is that we are doing some good stuff. But when it comes to like the big ticket items and the things that could really, really impact things, you've got a speaker on the other side who controls that agenda. And there can be 95 people, like we know on the postpartum and the Gales law, that it was virtually united. Everybody wanted it. And he wouldn't put on the agenda. And we had to literally shame him and do this stuff that we did on the floor. Thank God we had 23 new people. So there was 40 some. And said, every time they tried to bring something to our talk, we said, well, we wanted to do this amendment, and then just start talking about the amendment. And then they finally had to caucus, and it took a couple days, but, got it on the floor and got it passed. And that's how we did it. So hopefully in the next session, we have the change in leadership, because that's our plan. And then the things that you see out there that we've raised as bills that have gone nowhere, that we can then say, that's our blueprint. That's that. If you want to know what we're after, it's there. We just have to line it up and do it. Right.
Well, let's go there a little bit. You said next session. So is it true that the Senate and Assembly have concluded their session for the calendar year of 26?
Well, this is where the power of one, right? The power of that one speaker, Robin Vos, has dictated everything. He dictates the calendar. He dictates the committees that we're on. He dictates where our offices are. He dictates where our parking spot is. He dictates where we sit in the assembly floor.
Okay.
And he dictates when we meet and when we end and when we start. And that's what he did. He called it early. And I truly believe that most of the Republican Party didn't want to do that. They had other things. They had things they wanted to get across the line for their constituents, right? And all we see, and just keep in mind, every single bill you've seen since we've been in office has been Republican-led. Not one Democratic bill. Not one.
Even if they like the bill.
Even if they like the bill, they throw it to the side.
Lead.
That's the power of one.
He says, even though Karen had a great idea,
good idea.
and Maureen had a great idea, if there isn't a Republican lead on it, so that forces us to go find one of their people across the aisle
to give them
and then if it's a popular thing, then they kick.
They built. That's called bill
Senator
jacking.
so and so did that, and it's like, no, we did that.
Okay.
But we've come to the. I think as Democrats, I think we sit there and go, well, as long as it gets across. You just do it for the good of the people.
Right.
And we do. And those are words we use on a regular in our offices and in our caucus. Yeah. But when there's good bills that just aren't seen because of probably money, I'm a big follow the money trail.
Yeah.
Who's for wakeboards? I'm just going to do that as an example. The wakeboard boat bill. It was so many people, at least in my district, and I believe I've heard from other districts, were like, please stop this.
Yeah.
Let's legislate this.
Yeah.
Let's save for many, many reasons. Well, that went down to the wire and passed. I don't know if it's been signed off, and I don't know if it will be, but it was passed at the last minute because the lobbyists of the big boat companies came in and just look at the records, and there's money being funneled into the Republican Party to make this happen, knowing that people did not want it. Even their people, they live up north.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of lakes.
But see, here's the thing. Even though the speaker gets elected like the rest of us by the electorate, he still has to get elected by his own party to be the speaker. So they can't hide behind that curtain to go, well, we were all on board, but Robin wouldn't do it. You put him in that
you guys
speaker
put him
spot.
there. Right.
And you've had him in there for years. So, hey, whatever. I mean, sometimes, the change has to come from within, and they haven't done that. And they're going to feel the
it's a very interesting dynamic. So his announcement of him being out, I mean, I can't imagine there wasn't a party or two out there, but it also adds an element of now what?
Mm-hmm.
So,
you saw some of them run for the door this past week. So
we've seen a lot of,
and
so
then we
they're
got some
feeling
campaign finance stuff going on there with one of the senators.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting way that how there's one person, and I was sorry, I do believe that our Republican counterparts, they don't all feel that way. But what the thing about that is they also don't say no. They don't follow their own moral compass. And that is very, very, very disappointing to see that.
So there will be a change in November.
Here's
the
hope.
plan.
Right. Well, there will be, because Vos isn't going to run. And so we are hoping that
we're hoping for a larger change.
A larger change, right?
I think what we are going to see is a more leveling effect. We saw it this last election, right? Yeah. We saw 23 new Democratic legislators go into the assembly, right? With that, it really, like Maureen had mentioned, it gave us some leverage to close that gap a bit. It used to be 66 Republicans and 33 Democrats. They didn't have a leg to stand on.
Right.
Now we're at 54 Republicans and 45 Democrats. So it's a little more in the middle. And if you sway a couple, either way, it could happen.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that gap even squeezes in a little bit more, because then regardless of what party is in the speaker seat, perhaps we can have that negotiation. Perhaps we can meet
fair. It's a fair.
We can meet in the middle on good legislation.
So assuming you have the ability, regardless of who's in control, what would the highest priorities be?
I think we've talked about education.
Yeah.
we talk about that affordability, right? And I know that's just kind of a blanket, but it is. Knowing what we talked to, education is one.
Yeah.
We're looking at criminal justice and what that looks like. We're looking at healthcare, which includes not only like SNAP benefits and mental health and all those kind of encompassing things. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I mean,
Energy.
Here's one. I mean, when you don't focus just strictly on the bottom line, but I'm a veteran. I served in the National Guard for years, and so I belong to my neighborhood American Legion. And one thing I know, and I've known this even before coming to the legislature, is that we're the only state that doesn't recognize Veterans Day as a state holiday. When I was on the county board, I did a resolution that recognized it at the county level. So Dane County recognizes it. Probably some other counties do. But the state of Wisconsin doesn't recognize Veterans Day as a state holiday. That's a big deal. It's a big deal to every veteran out there. And veterans by nature are like, well, I hate to liken them to politicians, but they're there because the majority of us want to serve the public. We're trying to make things better for everybody. We're looking at a big picture and going, what can I do to help? And so because of that, so the veterans have lobbied for years. They're like, I don't want, it's not about me personally. It's just recognize the people that sacrificed their lives, that went to war, that signed up, that wore the uniform, whatever. Just we can be in the same group with every other state. Right?
Well,
and it's a bipartisan thing.
What is the argument against it?
Okay, so here's the argument that I've heard. Here's the back argument, is that somewhere along the line, there was a bargaining that happened with a contract with employees at the state level. And they were going to give them another floating holiday, and they named it Veterans Day, but it was a floating holiday. Now, that's what I've been told. So you take that out of the equation. We're talking about Veterans Day being acknowledged for veterans as a state holiday, like every other state in this country.
Right.
So that's a big deal.
It's a big
People
deal.
don't understand that that's a big deal. If you've been in the military, it's a big flipping deal. And they try to use it like, they try to wear the military like military, and I'm like, well, that's just not true. I got people coming up to me at my meetings generally afterwards because they're non-political groups. But, I had one guy that came up to me. I won't give him away by giving his rank when he was there or whatever. But he said, Maureen, I do not want a rebate check. I don't need $1,000. He said, I want it fixed. I want our schools to work. This guy's got grandkids. He's got neighbors. He goes, I want our schools to work, and I want this whole tax mess straightened out. He saw the bill that got put out there, and he said, that's a good bill.
When you say the bill that was put out there, say more about that.
There's a bill that Rep. Phelps and Cruz put out that addresses the so-called surplus. But what it's saying is, let's take a big chunk of that money. Let's fund our schools the way they're supposed to be. And then let's move this off the back of the property owners into the state budget. And that will effectively bring your taxes down. And then index it each time for, the CPA. And then it will, going forward, it won't be a problem. It makes all the sense in the world.
Because referendums would go away unless you're building a new building or something along those lines. That you
something
operational.
When every 97 out of 99 counties have referendums in them. That's where we're at.
That's a broken system.
That's a broken system.
That's called quit fixing the old car. You need to, sometimes you do have to, it's like, you built this house of cards. It doesn't work. It's falling apart, all the way back to Scott Walker and the gang, and they've been in control. So you clear the slate and do what works, right? Quit trying to fix something that's so broken, right?
So related to this, there's a lawsuit pending, Green Bay School District, correct? Are you familiar with that with regard to equitable funding across school districts?
Oh, yeah, where they sued the state because they weren't meeting their constitutionally dictated amount. Yeah.
Right. And that's very
we see
much
more and more here in our district. We had all of our superintendents write a formalized letter to the state legislature and the Senate regarding this whole thing. And that was powerful. And then other counties started following suit with that, but they were the first ones that...
We need good schools to teach the kids And if there's issues in a particular district or a rural versus urban where one's overflowing, but in a rural district, they're losing kids. Well, why are they? It's a circular firing squad. They're losing kids because they don't have good schools. Why don't they have good schools?
And that's what we know. So when we talk about priorities, it's strengthening our communities, continually strengthening our communities. And it's more difficult, or maybe not more, I don't know. But it is very difficult in a rural setting. Because when you lose one of the three parts that make a strong community, it's education, it's housing, and it is hospital. And you lose one of those three things, your community starts to deteriorate. You start seeing open fronts in downtown businesses. You start to see families moving out. You start to see farms being sold. You start to see schools being closed. All of those things. So we need to really baseline it. I think this bill kind of helps, kind of even that playing field for the moment. But that's what we need to look at.
I've been coming to Madison for years because we had aunts and uncles that lived here. I didn't grow up in Madison, but we would visit. And it's like, gosh, my aunt and uncle had, they had 5 kids and everybody had half a dozen or more. Mom stayed home. She didn't work. She just took care of the house and the kids. Dad went to work. Well, what were they doing? Well, you got back to the labor thing. You had good jobs. You had the boom, back in the 50s, you had family sustaining jobs, right? And we don't have that. And we need that. And one of your questions was about labor, but having been on the labor side and then worked in that environment for years, it's like they are the true backbone of the country. You have a middle class. And when the middle class is strong, they can afford to buy the goods that are out there that, that creates spinoff jobs. So, I mean, that's something we need to look at also. You can't tell somebody they're failing when you're paying them $20 an hour and they can't afford a car, a place to live, and a kid and go on vacation. What are you, crazy? Well, we used to do that here in America. That's what made us great. So why is that like supposed to be a luxury for people?
Right.
A luxury to go to the Dells for the weekend?
It's one of the priorities back to that. And thank you for reminding that what we talk about in caucus is raising minimum wage.
Yes.
I mean, we need a livable wage. If we're going to have these kind of high costs and what we see and everything else, how do we get there? And then you're mad that somebody can't afford it because we pay them garbage.
$7. I mean,
my God.
Worked at Burger
So
King
you wonder why people have 3 and 4 and 5 jobs and a side hustle, and you wonder why they're at the food pantry every week. So minimum wage is a priority to fix that.
Okay, my staffer is a former 4th grade school teacher. They couldn't swing it financially with a couple of kids and a husband, so she's now my staffer.
Economic issues are certainly huge.
Sure.
And I'm hearing that as a focus for you and doing it in a fiscally responsible way.
Yes.
You also mentioned healthcare. And with the changes that have taken place at the federal level, what are the implications for Wisconsin financially and for families over the next year?
Right. When you look at the cost of healthcare, if we did preventative care, that's why we ran so hard at Gale's Law. That's why we ran so hard at postpartum. The cost of not doing that legislation is so much greater. So that's just one example. If that is going to save the state of Wisconsin hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year in healthcare costs.
How so?
Because it's preventative.
If you catch a small tumor and cut it out, she goes in or I go in, they go,
or I go in.
We caught it early.
Yeah.
We're going to get it out.
Right.
Boom. Come and see me in 6 months. Come and see me in a year. Now I couldn't go in because I didn't have that coverage. They didn't find it. I'm sicker than a dog coming into an urgent care, whatever. And they go, oh my God, you're like 4-stage metastatic. Now you got to go in a bed. You got to get treatments. You got to have surgery maybe. And it goes on. And then where is that cost going to go when you can't pay it?
Right.
Well, you're going to, somebody somewhere is going to cough it out. But, where I go with a lot of the healthcare stuff, it's the insurance companies.
Right.
How do you build these humongous, huge castles, where they work? And then off you go on your jets to your conferences and your whatever, and you're denying people coverage. I paid my premium, damn it. Give me the coverage. And they get denied at this juncture and that juncture. That is just beyond, in my humble opinion. You get rid of it. It's called, we have Medicare. This is a Bernie line. You don't put an age on it. If you want to buy something outside of that, more power to you.
Yeah.
But the day you're born, you have Medicare.
Right.
Pure and simple.
Preventative is across the boards. I mean, when you talk about healthcare, certainly you treat it early, you save yourself money. It's just like education. You educate them early, you save yourself money in the long term. So the whole idea of Boys and Girls Club hat on now, just for a second, is easier to fix and help a young person than it is a older, we call, or a broken adult, somebody who's so far into it that it's harder to get out. So when we see this, I can give you an example of my campaign manager. She has stage 4 breast cancer. She has been fighting it for 6 years now. We have an I'm Still Alive party every year for her. Because the ACA, when she retired from her job as a special education teacher after 30 years, the school district, because of Scott Walker, she now no longer was eligible for healthcare, affordable healthcare through the school district. She could get it, but it would cost her, $25,000 a year. ACA,
which means she can't afford it, so she really can't get it, but she could,
exactly,
theoretically.
So she still has cancer. She's trying desperately to get, and now you throw in the Medicare and the federal ACA debacle, and now suddenly she can't get an affordable price. She can get some catastrophic care. Okay, that's great. Catastrophic means I'm going to die, when that's not maintenance care for stage 4 breast cancer. Add in the insurance companies. This is where we have to have major reconstruction, is how insurance companies became doctors, that they're the ones telling you which puffer you can puff on, what kind of insulin you can use, what kind of surgery you can or can't have, what doctor you can or can't see.
Covering this drug that you need to save your life. But next month, we're going to take it off the formula.
So now my friend has to go see all new doctors. She's had 6 years of doctor care. She has a team watching out for her now because insurance tells her she has to go see another doctor. That is just wrong in our society. So that major reform needs to happen there. And Maureen's right. And what that cost is. And we know there's cost of doing business. We understand that. We're not trying to, knock down the big giant Taj Mahal building of, United Healthcare as an example. Not that they're the only one.
I'd be fine with
but we do need to manage it better where healthcare is for the people, not for big business.
So that's kind of a global response. Is there anything that you can specifically do in the next session, assuming you can get bills to the floor?
Well, we did Gale's Law and we did postpartum. So Gale's Law says if you go in and your doctor goes, I don't like that mammogram, we're going to have to do another one. Your insurance company can't say no. That's what that bill does. That says
as of last week,
they will cover it.
As of last
week. I read
that.
And when you have a baby.
Can I just say that? So, and who that helps, back to that previous conversation of maintenance. So who is that? It's women with dense breast tissue. One of the largest demographics of women with dense breast tissue are African-American community. So those are the people we are helping. And so when you look at those costs, right, of doing that, so who does it actually affect, right? So go on.
So, and then the postpartum thing, women can become depressed. They can,
So previously, just explain it. So we had 2 months. So you have a baby, which everybody wants you to have a baby. But then once you have said baby, there's no coverage. There's no doctor care that's covered after 60 days. There's no SNAP benefit. There's no early childhood education. We've talked Head Start, but we've just eliminated these things. But we want you to have that baby. right? So I have
And
big
again,
problems with
we
that.
had to be literally the last state in the country to
Right.
pass that. Every
Right.
other state, even Missouri, passed it.
So now
I
we
mean,
have
talk about being
postpartum
shamed into
care
it.
for
That's
the
the
next
sad
12
thing,
months
right?
for women. So, which is great because postpartum care, like Maureen said, how many women have died? How many children have been abused because their mom is having mental health issues?
Or they get a health issue as a result, like a latent infection that doesn't show up until a few months or so later, and you're not covered anymore. So you
Right.
it's cramps, it's cysts, it's fevers, it's whatever, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you go septic or something.
So it's taking
So,
care of
yeah.
women in Wisconsin. That is, unfortunately, that is a huge conversation that we have. It's women across the boards. When you look at
But-
most of these things that we're talking about, they're women's issues.
Yeah.
As we talk more clearly about some of the bills that tried to get passed on voter registration, and we see that on the federal level, right? But talking about Wisconsin, they're absolutely trying to pass those things, those kind of pieces of legislation now that would curtail or perhaps just stop women from being able to vote. Women, not men.
Well, before we get into that,
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
because I think that's important to dig into, but why don't more of these bills, these important things you're talking about, why don't they get bipartisan support?
Sometimes they do. A lot of but the Gales on the postpartum did. It
Okay.
had a lot of bipartisan support,
Mhm.
but it goes back to your speaker. He does not have to put it on the agenda, and so he doesn't unless he wants to. And he calls it
Follow the money.
welfare. He thinks it's welfare that
We
you
already
get.
give too much.
Yeah,
to
like
them.
the postpartum thing. That's just welfare. You're just
You're
giving
just giving it to
giving
them.
stuff away. That's how he views it, right? So I mean, I think what
It's a
we're
common
going to have to do
refrain
is
from,
we'll keep doing these singular bills on the side for those projects while we continue to work on the bigger picture. And I don't know that there's an answer to your question, other than to say if we get the majority, we'll look at it more holistically, and we try to do that. But it's a battle when it's a battle to try to save somebody's life, when you get people on their side of the aisle going, my wife had this or my daughter had
Right.
this, and they still
Right.
can't convince their own speaker. They know, there were 8 of them that came out when we had that caucus that did their own press conference that basically said we had to knock down, drag out in the back room. Now, they didn't word it that way, but that was what they were saying. We had a larger discussion, and us 8 here have convinced the rest of them, and we will be voting on this with no strings attached. That was their message after they got beat up all day by us for all the right reasons. So, so we'll look at it in a more holistic and a more, overreaching to the extent that we can.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to be in the driver's seat.
I think we have to. I think part of our jobs too is I'm a big fan, but Boys and Girls Club and any kind of circus is lead by example. When we govern, we have to lead the way we'd want to be led, right? It's like when I supervise people, lead them the
Don't
way
do
you
what
want
you
them to
wouldn't do.
be.
Don't expect them
So
to do
teach
something
them
you
the
wouldn't
ways.
do
Right.
yourself.
So I'm hopeful that as we continue these kind of conversations, I'm hoping that as we continue to model the behavior we want through our legislature, from our governance, I want my constituents to believe in me, that I will listen regardless of where you are, but I'll hear you. And if it's good for you or good for all, then yes. But if it hurts or harms someone else, I will not do it. Will not do it.
Yeah.
So how do we, I just hope that someday we can help convince not only our colleagues across the aisle, but maybe on that overarching picture of even our constituents, that we can show that we can all actually live together in this world. There's enough room for all of us. We can have differing opinions, but when we come down to harming someone else because our beliefs are supposedly better or stronger or more right than yours, that's where we need to make some changes.
Okay. I like that vision. Can we dig into a little bit of committee work?
Sure.
So, Maureen, you already talked about a really important issue for veterans. You sit on is it the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee?
Correct.
Okay. So what do you think the biggest issues are facing veterans?
Well, mental health, homelessness, jobs. I mean, all of those things, because oftentimes if they've served when they come back, they're going to have probably at a minimum anxiety if they've been in any kind of a war zone.
Yeah.
And there's a certain kind of like, I don't want to say they get hooked on the adrenaline, but you're hyper, right? Because you're always unaware, right? I mean, somebody might be shooting at you, or you may be, so
Hypervigilance.
and then you come back and you're what? You're going to go to job 8 hours a day and come home and have dinner and watch TV, or I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's a huge shift. So there's going to be mental health issues. There's your older veterans that they've been guaranteed care and a home for the rest of their life. And so we closed 2 of those, Chippewa and Green Bay, this past year because Republicans wouldn't fund it. The governor was ready to sign. There was money in the budget that he had. And
Now it's in surplus.
yeah, and the MIA bill, there's like 82,000 Americans that haven't come home yet. And there's
Right.
like 1,500 of them are from the state of Wisconsin. Roughly 1,300 were from World War II. Then a chunk of them were from Vietnam, and then there's a
Okay.
few that are missing in action. But and so that was a partnership with the UW
Yeah.
that the governor was more than willing to sign. It's been in the budget a couple of times, and they've said no. And it's a MIA recovery project designated just for
Yeah.
service members here in Wisconsin. And so with the Republicans, we had a big, media event the day that it happened because it was on the agenda to be heard, and the chair pulled it off. And he's still in reserves himself. So I mean, now you've got these families of people, and I know this personally because it happened with an uncle of mine that was brought home after 7 decades, but that never get closure. They don't know what happened to their kid or their spouse or
Right.
their dad or whatever. And their government isn't holding up their end of the bargain again. It's bring them home.
Yeah.
I'll put my life on the line, says the soldier, and I'll go over, and now I've died. I've done the ultimate. And you can't even find a way to, when there's technology and everything there that say you can be identified and get you home to your family.
Yeah.
And they won't
That
do it.
again seems like a no-brainer that it should get
It really does.
nonpartisan
So
support.
And this is where you
un-American.
see across the aisle where we know there's veterans on the other side. They're just like us. They think, but they still will vote green. They will vote the way they're told to vote.
Let's switch over to Karen for a little bit and talking about the mental health and substance abuse prevention. What is that committee working on? What are you trying to bring forward? What are their priorities?
This committee in particular didn't meet a lot until maybe towards the end of the session. Unfortunately, because mental health is a priority of the state, supposedly, we saw a few things that were kind of good and kind of not good. One of the things that I am proud that we did, although I would have liked to see a few more amendments to it, but we did up in Chippewa Valley, up north, is where they lost 2 hospitals. I mean, this is where communities just fall apart. They lost 2 major hospitals, which decimated that area. So you can imagine the mental health kind of rose to the top of the list of what to do's. So we did supply some money, about $3 million, to Rogers Behavioral Health to create a facility that would then create an availability of, I want to say, it was a minute ago, 50 new beds with some outside counseling work for others and things like that. So really making it available up in that desert. I mean, it's a desert area. So that was great. $3 million. So one of the things I asked was, why Rogers? If there's, I know there's others out there. Why Rogers? Yeah. So that was never really answered fully. And if it's $3 million, again, fiscal responsibility, I'm like, $3 million of taxpayer money for mental health? How are we going to measure that? And they were just going to write a check out of our GPR funding to this, without any criteria set up. What happens? How do we know if it's successful? When is this building getting done? Is there a ribbon cutting? What kind of doctors are they going to hire? How many people are they going to serve everyone? Are they going to serve Medicaid people? Are they going to serve LGBTQ people? Are they? Yeah, those were all things because they really wanted it. We all wanted it. We just wanted it to be right, especially when it's taxpayer dollars. So those are the kind of things we have. How do we prevent our young people from suicide prevention? That was a big one. We talked a lot about those statistics. Farmer suicide. Let's talk about those statistics. Let's talk about just mental health, incarcerated individuals. Let's talk about those statistics and how do we support them in their journey to becoming law-abiding, tax-paying citizens that we want in our communities. So we did come to some negotiation at the very end of our committee, but it wasn't enough. We didn't answer the right questions.
Okay.
We just didn't. And they were unwilling to hear the right questions. So I'm hoping that I can remain on that committee. That matters to me. In the next years, and that we can have a little bit more control and really get to the root of some of these issues.
Well, let's go from that specific topic to process. You also sit on the speaker's rulemaking.
Oh my
committee.
gosh!
Can you talk a little bit about
that? So it's been very interesting. Again, a very gerrymandered committee, you know, and so the idea of it was to look at the rules. So there was a reason why this committee was created by the speaker, because he wants to stop departments from making their own decisions. So, for instance, you look at DPI or DNR or any of the millions of departments that we have. They want to look at those processes because they don't want these heads of these departments to be making decisions. So what they did was they had us go around the state, which was a lot, and listen to people that were invited to come in. You can imagine there was, let's see, the manufacturers, people came in, and some manufacturers people came in, and then more manufacturers people came in to talk to us about things that they would like to see changed. So when you hear these people come in, they just want the legislators to have the power. And I think that's wrong. Legislators, I don't know anything about building a house. I don't know what size screws you need. I don't know how many ducts you need to put in there or how big your firewall is. I don't know that. I don't want to be in charge of that, making a law like that. I'll rely on the experts of our departments that are paid to be department heads to provide you with that information. Right. And us as legislators. And then we create the legislation around it that would be best. And we have very differing views, the Republicans and the Democrats, on what that should look like. But it was a very eye-opening, but it hasn't really gone too far. And then now we're done.
And that's completely different from what I thought it was. I thought it was rulemaking for the legislature itself.
That's what I thought, too. I thought, so we're going to make rules. Don't we already have those? Because we do. There's already rules for how the legislature works.
Yeah. And, the connection that I see there is with some of the lawsuits that have gone all the way to the Supreme Court that attempt to disempower the federal agencies and state agencies. And the take I've taken from that is that what corporations are attempting to do is to reduce how quickly regulations can be put in place, because every regulation has to come back to the legislature for debate and vote and can't be put in place in a reasonable amount of time by.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is, you're right on the money. And what those legislative responsibilities are and who they benefit. So when we look at the who it benefits, like one of the things that I did learn, we were in a very small town up north, and there was a county that 400 people lived in this township, and all of their tax bills went up 3 times, some 4 times. Crazy. a crazy amount of tax because they had to put a new water filtering system in that had to be paid for somehow, and so they didn't get enough from the state or the federal government, but they had to meet requirements for PFAS and those numbers, all the numbers that are decided. And I thought that it was very interesting to hear how it financially fell on the backs of these people. It did give me some time in my office to come back and go, what does this look like? And what could we do legislatively on circumventing that and providing smaller townships, especially? Like if you went into Dane County or Milwaukee or something, you'd probably have a lot more influence as far as who would pay for what. Yeah. You go to a little town that's on their own, very rural. Yeah. How do we think? So it was very eye-opening in that regard of how we could help in rule-making a smaller town.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about rural development a little bit. One of the things that was coming to mind for me is just some of the lead abatement projects of getting rid of lead water pipes and where that funding comes from. And I could see that having a huge impact on a small community as well.
Yeah. Yep. So I do sit on the Rural Development Committee, and just ask me, how many times did we meet?
How many times did the Rural Development Committee meet?
Let me think. 0.
Okay.
Now, I was super doe-eyed and bushy-tailed and very excited to be on this committee when I very first started, right? Yeah. So for the first year, I would knock on the door of the committee chair, and I'd be told, we don't need to meet. And I was like, well, there's a rural development. I live rurally. I've got some people asking some questions that we could talk to. And we just never met. Okay. Never. So when I look at that, this is again, are they important, or did they get circumvented, these issues, perhaps to another committee? Because that's also what happens. The speaker will say, oh, I like this bill, or I don't like this bill. It's moving kind of quickly. I'll take it out of here and put it into there. And then it has to sit there legally for 21 days or some, there's some number.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a number, but so they can shift things around so that they never get hurt. It's like dying in committee. It's like back to that Schoolhouse Rock, right? I'm just a bill, yes, my bill, sitting in committee. Sitting in committee is real. So a good bill can sit in committee over and over and over and over until it just never sees the light of day.
Got it.
So I know that didn't answer your question.
No,
but there's a lot of things rurally that I would like to see. Yeah. That lead abatement's a big one. The PFAS we just did get
the
that
governor
passed.
Signed $133 million to finally release those funds that have been tied up in JFC.
Yep. So that would be for small grants.
Fantastic.
For local, especially rural areas, wells. Things like that will have some grant funding to support.
That kind of committee would be the one that I would think of, something like regulations on large-scale farms or CAFOs. And I know we didn't have this in the questions, but one of the things I was wondering about, we did a podcast recently on CAFOs, and one of the farms that I researched is up in Pierce County. And what I noticed was they had the county or the township had considered issuing like $15 million in bonds for the expansion of that farm. And I know that's not at the state level, that's at the township level. But are there incentives for farms to get bigger? And in those incentives coming from, other than the economies of scale that the market would suggest, but are there incentives from government entities to get farms to go bigger?
I think there needs to be more conversation, certainly, but more dedicated eyeballs on our smaller farms and how we support them, and to meet the needs of CAFOs and to meet the needs of water quality and to meet those needs, because that's what they're doing. But we need them, right? Yeah. We need these farms, but we also want to help them meet those criteria that we are also setting.
I'd love to see some of those incentives to be just to support small farms 1,000%. Rather than they have to grow.
1,000%.
Yeah, and I know of initiatives in some European countries where some of the funding is contingent upon farms also becoming tourist stays.
Mm-hmm.
So at
We've talked
vineyards
about
or
that.
at farms. And that makes sense.
It does.
Because I do value small farms. My
Mhm.
wife comes from a small farm. My
Mhm.
family, a little bit further back, had small farms. I'd
Mhm.
love to see some way to support them rather than the incentives being to have 9,000 animal units in a.
I hear you, and
a
I think
site.
that's what we're hearing from our farmer friends and families. So, in addition to that, what does that support look like? I would love to see us work on how we can uplift farms staying in families generationally. We're seeing more and more of that just people, because of all the
Make it seamless.
we
when
make it so
transfers.
hard. Yeah, right.
Mhm.
We recently traveled to Minnesota and met with both Maureen and I, and we met some farmers who desperately just want land. They want to,
Yeah.
but they're not a family farm. They just want to do it. So how does a person who just has a desire to have a farm get connected with somebody who potentially maybe is aging out of their farm and they have no heirs to it?
Right.
How can we connect those dots, these land contracts? And so we're looking at that. How can we be creative to meet the needs of Wisconsin? Because farming is, our gold star narrative. But I question how much we're really helping that,
Yeah.
on a state level.
Yeah. Flipping over to something a little bit different is energies and utilities. You sit on that committee, and I want to eventually come around to talking a little bit about data centers. But can you tell us about the committee itself, what kind of work they do?
Right. So similar to what Karen experienced, we've met like less than one handful,
Okay.
of times.
Okay.
And the big things that are coming at the state that we're going to see moving forward is the demand for energy, and because of the data centers that are exploding around the country. And then how do we allow for that? How do we produce clean energy? And then we're part of the MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operation,
Okay.
13 states in Canada.
I mean, just to
And
be
so-
clear, the demand for energy is increasing
Yeah.
in the
Yes,
populace,
of
right? With the data centers or not, but
Yes.
they are certainly compounding the demand.
Right. So we've opened up the conversation to talk about nuclear in the state, kind of revitalizing or bringing that back. Possibly even the Kiwani site that's been closed for years.
Okay.
One of the questions I have is, you can't just walk in and fire it up. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to need new equipment or technology or whatnot.
Okay.
So that conversation will be ongoing. I sat on a panel here a few weeks ago, actually, with one of our Republican friends. So we were kind of eye and eye, and what we viewed as what we see coming down the track and what we need. And it was a panel to talk to students. But the panel was having to do with data centers and energy. So back to your original question. So data centers have a huge demand for energy, along with other things that they bring to the table. But how do we source that, right? So you want to have clean energy. You're worried about the planet. So there's a bill introduced by Rep. Tenorio in the last few days that talks about getting to clean energy and carbon free by 2050. So is that doable? We don't know yet, but it's not going anywhere this session, but it's a good roadmap to go forward. And then having worked for a utility that was very green, our mission was always going green. We quit burning coal years before we had to, and trying to move it closer and closer to as clean as we can get it. But there's so many different moving parts, and again, when you're part of the the MISO, right? So that understanding that that's 13 different states, so then it becomes not just what are we doing here in Wisconsin, what are our neighbors doing?
Yeah.
I mean, we can solve for our issue, but if, Illinois goes, oh my God, I need a ton of power, and, you're all part of the MISO family, then you're trying to move that power through the grid,
Right.
and you need to do it responsibly, and you need to have a system in place that's going to be able to, give it and produce it and move it, and then, who's going to pay for it and share the the costs and all that. So everybody's got to be on board. And so energy is a huge discussion with regards to data centers. How do we protect people here in the state of Wisconsin? Well, there's a number of ways to look at it. One is legislation at the state. So, and the Democrats did introduce a very complicated bill. I shouldn't say comprehensive bill that was worked on for the better part of a year that covered environmental. It covered the energy demand. It covered the water piece. It covered who was going to pay for what.
I think the idea was setting guardrails, right? It's just
it's setting guardrails, but what happened with it was that like so many other things, it never got hearing, right?
Yeah.
And so the Republicans came up with a flimsy version of something like that, that was like a couple pages. It didn't go into the devil in the details. They never ran it by the Energy Committee.
Okay.
They ran it by state affairs, so they just circumvented the whole process that's in place.
Yeah.
So they weren't serious about it, and the governor's going to veto it clearly. But again, you go back to like your Public Service Commission. So the state of Wisconsin has one of the most strong public service commissions in the country.
Okay.
And that's a good thing, right? So you assume they're looking out for the public. So then, and having worked for a utility, so there's different rates at commercial, residential, business that customers pay based on their load, what they need, their demand on the resources that you have. So in the case of a data center, you would say, well, if you're going to need this amount of power, then we're going to charge you this rate. And if it jumps higher, then we're going to charge you this rate. And then from that extra charge or that tariff, you put that into a pot that say that goes for when we need to build that new power plant that's coming down the road, so that Jim and Karen and all of us here aren't going to get stuck footing the bill for it, right? So you want that type of stuff in place, and it's not in place yet, but that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at, and you want to look at it from a state level and then also at the Public Service Commission level. But so in terms of energy, it's a huge ordeal, and how you deal with nuclear, that will take years in the making, right? I mean, even to site an existing plant to get it up and running is going to be years, but technology moves in leaps and bounds. So I'm always cautiously optimistic that we can be, ahead of what the timing is. They say that it's going to take to do things, because we want our phones to work. We want our technology to work. Well, data centers are, they're the necessary evil that we have to have it, right? So, so you have groups that will protest it, but they're using the very resources to protest it that they're protesting against, right? So there's that, right? And a lot of it goes back to education, and even data centers themselves. I mean, you've heard about the open loop versus the closed loop. Well, they're solving for the water piece, right? And nuclear is at the answer to what the data centers are needing. And then you're going to play these games of, everything's running down the track. Here's the timing. Here's how long it takes to make nuclear. When is that huge demand on data centers coming, right? It's coming fast, but, how can we get the two to meet so that we're meeting the demand as the demand is needed? And, will it be the big deal that it is today if we have nuclear and you've got a clean source of energy? So one of the steps that also was taken was to reclassify nuclear energy as a clean energy source, right? So that allows it to have different rules and regulations around it that help move the ball down the track.
Okay.
So that's good. So, so that's what we're doing on data centers. And then as far as energy, the utility companies, again, they play three-dimensional chess. If they're asking for a little something over here, it's usually because there's a bigger picture over here. So they'll come over and fix this piece and then this piece and then this piece. So it's all going to tie together. It's not just a one-off kind of a thing. So it's a complicated area, but I kind of get into it. It's not boring, but some may think so, but it's
a pretty big. Can I just add to that? I love that she's on that and she knows so much more about it than I do. However, we do have to look environmentally. That's what my young constituents talk to me about, is environment and climate. and water.
And so
together.
you get another data center, one that's looking to locate in Janesville, like the old General Motors site, right?
Yeah.
So now you've got an environmentally contaminated area,
Right.
and that particular data center is offering to pay for that. So that's a ton of money that's kept anybody else from locating there, because of the costs associated with it. So then you got a whole different thing. You got a way to say, well, they're willing to clean it up, right? So what it kind of really boils down to from a municipality standpoint would be your developer agreements and the fact that they need to have a lot of teeth in them.
Yep.
And that, and it's so new that, we're still trying to get our arms around it. So it's going to take time, and we don't know the total environmental fallout. We know, again, out there, and the ones I've heard, they're saying, tell us what you need and we'll pay for it. But we don't know some of what we don't know, right? What might be the effect.
Following the lead of other states too is going to be helpful for us. But it's really what I think our caucus is really talking about. What kind of guardrails, based on fact of what we see in other places, what needs to be in place to kind of ensure some smooth transition of it's going to happen no matter what, right? We know this.
And that's what that legislation would have done.
Yeah.
It had it in there, and it addressed the environmental piece. It addressed the water piece. It addressed the electrical piece. It addressed the pay piece. It addressed the labor and who's going to build it piece. It addressed the public safety piece. It addressed all of it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't give it a hearing.
Right.
And they came up with a 2-page that they ran by a different committee. They were not serious.
Boy, there's so many things I'd like to ask you
I
about.
know. This could be the longest podcast ever.
Yeah. We could do like a daily.
You really could. But we do want to transition to really kind of ending on some positives.
Absolutely.
So when you if you run for re-election, what would be the top 2 or 3 things you'd like people in your district to know about you and your priorities?
I can go first. Couple 2 or 3 things that I would like them to know. Well, number one, I'm going to get up and go to work every day, because that's what I always do, and that's what I always will do. I'm going to do my best to reach across the aisle, and that's always been a big thing. I've been on an elder task force with folks on the other side, and my staffer, her dad's in the assembly, and he's a Republican. So, I mean that, right? We have to work together, and like we mentioned before, we do. That just doesn't always come through in the media. So in an effort to solve the bigger problems that people have, they don't want us in there fighting and slinging mud. They want answers. They want things to happen. And I want to work hard at to get government to run right. And we need to, we're not going to solve it just at the state level, but we need to get money out of politics. That is, you want to talk about why we're at where we're at.
Yep.
It's money. Follow the money is the most truest statement ever.
Yep.
So limit it somehow. Citizens United at the national level. I mean, these things need to change, and we're seeing that coming out of even congressmen now, like Pocan, and they're so. I would love to anything we can do at the state level to change that as well. And then, we could go down item by item, but on the 2 or 3 thing, clean up government, work with people across the aisle, and, let's take care of each other. And I'm going to work on any and all of that every day I will go to work.
Great.
Yeah. I'm super similar. I didn't go into this because it's super fun and it's making my life better. I look back at the why. Why do we do this? Why do I encourage others to go into it? I think ordinary people can do really extraordinary things, and regular people can make good policy. Regular people is what's going to make us join together. And much to what Maureen said, I'd like my constituents to know that I'm available, that I've always been a hard worker. They see that, so I don't think that that's going to be a change. But it does make me sad that they think just as now I'm in politics, and which I've never said, I'm working for the government. Also, I never thought I'd say that somehow I've lost that quality to my value system. So that's, I would like with you, I would like I would like people to believe that their representatives are actually there for them. I'm not here for me. I'm not winning or gaining or doing anything extraordinary from this job. It might be even on the opposite side of that. So
Right.
I would like people to know that really there are people that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I go back to, I guess it sounds so Mr. Rogers-y, right? That whole idea that treat people the way you want to be treated. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't lie. Do the right thing with the right reasons. And if you do have controversy, be able to back it up with the why you did it. But I do go back to something that I learned, again. I went to a school board school board member conference. It was so interesting to see people who run for school boards. Oh my God.
Those are where your knockdown dragouts are going.
telling you, what they have to go through, or county board or city board or village. Boo. Boy, my hat's off to those people, because you're dealing with neighbors.
Yeah.
You are really fighting a fight, or really you're kind of toe to toe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here we have 60,000 constituents that I hope to get to every single one. I hope to God in my lifetime I do.
Yeah.
But knowing that if we all could just support and work together, I would like very much for people to know that I support them, because you're you, right? And the more we work collectively, I just think we'll get it done. I really do. So we got to think about the bigger picture, but really start at back to my Boys and Girls Club hat. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
I ask myself, how are our kids doing? That's the question. And I learned that at that conference. One of these board members stood up and she goes, before I say, how are you, or introduce myself, I just want to say, hey, how are our kids doing? Such a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Are they doing good?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's some things we could fix. So when you go back to that fundamental question, I think it just makes you a baseline of I really am here to lend my experience. Have some fun doing it. I will not downplay that. In my world, in circus, they try to use that as a weapon against me often.
Yeah.
The GOP and whoever's going to run against me. Like, oh, they're bringing another clown in. I wish there were a whole bunch of us here, actually.
Right.
Clowns in a circus. And they say, well, you're going into another circus. I said, no, I'm not. That capital is not a circus. Circuses and clowns and circus people in general. Circuses are fun, warm, kind places. You go to it, you feel good when you leave. It starts on time and it ends on time.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, there's a thing you're going to see and learn something you didn't know about. You're going to be amazed. You're going to laugh. You're going to listen to some good music. You're going to watch people around you enjoy themselves. I wish our government acted like a circus. And so I just want to bring that fundamental. I'm a joyful person. I am, even when I'm mad. But I want to bring that in. So again, I go to lead by example. Let's just get the hard things done.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you would want to say? Anything else you would want us to hear?
Well, I mean, going on I would say we're just two people. But what as Karen drags me into the camera.
We're two people.
We're two people. But what I would say is we need everybody to get involved.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to do our part every day. We want at the minimum to go out and vote, because you actually control the legislature with your vote, because you're who puts this in or you're who takes this out. And so that's huge, right? So if I could see one thing actually happen, it would have people get involved. And that's just, what do you call that, baseline, right? And then beyond that, a lot of people go, well, I really can't help you because, I can't do doors or something like that. Yeah, but if you're talking to your neighbor, if you're in the grocery store, it's like you have an impact every day anytime you interact with somebody. So not that your life has to be consumed with politics, but you can help spread the good word, open up the door, hold the door for somebody who can't move around so well. There's just so many little things you can do to make the world a better place. And I do think that, if somebody holds the door open for me, it's like 2 hours later when I'm in a different store, I'm holding the door for somebody else because somebody did it for me. It made me aware that maybe somebody needs a door held open, for an example. But, those types of things.
Governor Evers, in
spread
this
it around.
year at his State of the Union, he has a theme, right? Last year it was Year of the Kid. This year it's Year of the Neighbor.
Yes.
I want to say. I think that's it.
Mhm.
And it's fundamentally basic. I think now's the time, especially now, we need to take a minute and put our phones away, turn your television off. Regardless of what you watch, turn it off. And really, like Maureen said, know your neighbors. See the people around you.
Okay.
See them.
And
wherever you are, whether it's your neighbors, whether you're in the store, whether it's I do this with my colleagues. I do. I look at them and I really try to see them as people like me, not sitting in a place of power. And I will say that if you do happen to have that luxury of sitting in a place of power, and regardless of what that power place is, use it wisely. Let's use it wisely.
So, life is not a dress rehearsal, right? You don't get today back.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And so, a friend of mine told me that one time. She goes, "It ain't a dress rehearsal. You don't get a do-over, right?" So just be conscious and live in the moment, right? What did John Lennon say? Life's what's happening while you're making other plans, right? So, I try to think about that and being in the moment. There are some people who are always living in the past, and there are some people who are always living for what I got to do next. But you want to be here and present. And I think that's a huge thing because there's so many things you can learn being present. And even if the person next to you isn't being present, you see that, right?
And get involved, like Maureen said. I think right now people are often, that's a question we have is what, I know we're rolling it up, is what can I do, right? And so like Maureen hit it, what can you do? Get to know your neighbors. Do something nice. But here's what don't do. Don't get behind your keyboard and be an anonymous warrior. Don't get in and say terrible things to somebody because you disagree with them. Just scroll past. Just keep on moving. Keep it moving. You don't have to sit there and be. Don't be ugly. Come on. Don't be ugly.
Don't be a bully.
So thanks to both of you for being here with us today. We covered a lot of ground, and you've opened up so many tangents that I would have liked to have gone down. I look forward to having you back for more
bring
discussions.
Lunch next time. We'll be happy to
We will bring lunch next time. We'll schedule a longer session as well. So no, seriously, you give me hope for the upcoming sessions when you do get back into session and you can move some things forward.
Thank you. And thanks for what you guys do. Really, it takes all of us. It takes everybody doing their part. So appreciate you all. It's weird. I know it.
Y'all do better when y'all do better, right?
Just saying.
I could have worn my Wellstone shirt.
Right.
That's right.
No, it's all good. So thanks for having us.
Have
us back.
We will.